Just tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay, so this is what this. I'll get into like where it might be recordable, but I just want to talk it out first. So the interesting thing about a fault line is it represents where the most vulnerable spots are as well. So like if an earthquake happens, certain part of the fault line are more vulnerable. So if there's a house there, for example, that house could get squished. Whereas if you're on a different part of the fault line, it's safer. So I feel like something about when we understand our patterns and understand how to create anomaly, using fault lines intentionally is a way to strategize your moves, in a sense. And I feel like it's directly connected to being sensitive, because it depends on how big of a upheaval you want in your life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that you can choose. Because sometimes, like we talked about, sometimes the reset has to be dramatic. And that's why people often won't choose change or choose anomaly, because they think everything's going to fall apart if they choose this. And oftentimes it does, because they wait until, like I said, the pressure has built so much that the earthquake is massive, instead of just a small earthquake that actually just shakes things just up enough. So it feels like fault lines have something to do with being able to choose how much, like choosing heaven on earth or choosing anomaly is choosing disruption. It's going to disrupt things. And so part of it is realigning your story. What story are you going to tell about that? Not expecting the worst case scenario, but living in the best case scenario, even in your thoughts and your projections about it. But then when you're living in that space, you can say, okay, well, I want it, like, here's the people on my fault line, or the situations on my fault line that this is going to disrupt the most, that me shifting is going to disrupt the most. For you, your family, your kids, or like everyone in your story, like you said, that's on your fault line, things shifted for them. So when we know that, we can choose even in how we think about the anomaly that we're choosing, how we approach it. We can choose to be sensitive in the areas we want to be sensitive, and soft where we want to be soft, and maybe even just fearless where we want to be fearless. And I think it's at least for me, it feels like a way to not feel like change has to be so scary and so hard and so or so catastrophic, choosing things like the Holocaust over and over, something that intense and that dramatic. Once the fault line's already, like, the scar's already been there. So I actually think the trajectory of heaven, that same fault line gets lighter and lighter and lighter until it almost feels like the energy that's held there is triggered so often that it's almost alive. You know what I mean? Like there's like a living energy in that fault line, that's where the anomaly lives. That's where heaven lives, is in the fault line.
So the fault line releases data, which is only energy, coiled energy, because it's been compounded over years and years of a belief system, like re-scarred. And in that re-scarring, we're just putting more data, which is...
And it like doubles in on itself.
Yeah, folds in like that fractal, which is more data, more energy, more tension. And over time, the tension or pressure of that builds up until our bodies, our emotional bodies, or our physical bodies can no longer support it. And that's when, if we're not careful, we can have a catastrophic earthquake.
Exactly.
Or like a tower moment in the tarot, or something that literally shakes our lives apart.
Yes.
I think we've all been there. I know I have. So what you're saying with fault lines then is, if we can pay close attention to where that tension is, where it's building and building and building, and where that data is becoming fractally compounded to on dangerous levels of compounding energy, and go in skillfully, place miniature dynamite or maybe a miniature charge to charge off that tension or that energy, so that fractal line, or so that fault line can find relief in that line instead of more tension.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you're saying?
Exactly. I think relief is the perfect word. Where the earthquake or the triggering the fault line can actually feel like relief rather than like a catastrophic event.
Well, it can feel like energy moving. Let's see, how do I want to say this? Instead of things falling apart, it's things falling together.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Falling into place.
And we all know that life happens for us. And I think oftentimes those places that we know that need the most healing, we know that needs the most attention or the most love or the most healing, we avoid and we avoid and we avoid and we avoid. I know, I have done this. I know how many times I've done, I know that pattern of avoidance.
And avoidance, we go unconscious. We go more unconscious because we're choosing not to look at it because we know it'll be disruptive.
Yeah. So really what I see about a fault line is it's very different than a blind spot.
Yeah.
A blind spot, you don't even know there's tension building there. And when it goes off, you're almost like blindsided by it. You're like, what just happened?
Right.
Where a fault line is, you know there's tension.
Something you're ignoring.
Something you're not dealing with, something you're not facing head on, something that you are too afraid to face and to see. And because of that, every time you turn away from it, you build tension and data in that whole line of events. And I mean, like our career, or our family or our partnership or our, I think family relationship, those are all big ones. But it can even be more subtle, like our relationship with money, how we feel about our art, how we feel about our interaction with the world. So anywhere where we have like reoccurring scars and how that scar filters in to that whole grid line creates an event that could blow up the whole line if we don't turn and just face what needs to be faced.
Yeah.
Okay.
And choosing, when we do turn and face it, again, that's looking at a trigger.
Yep.
And then in the moment of the trigger, changing the story, like gold mine, rather than something bad's going to happen that I need to prevent from happening or close my eyes to and ignore.
Yep.
When we shift that, we can choose consciously how we want to ride that same energy. And I think it's connected to choosing anomaly. Because, for example, in your relationship, if there's something that you feel the tension building, you feel you're being overlooked, or I don't know, anything that could be occurring in your relationship that you don't want to look at or face, the anomaly would be to look at it and face it, to talk about it together.
Absolutely.
And if you choose it there, you could actually catapult together in a different spot.
Absolutely.
And often couples don't choose it until something catastrophic happens.
Until the tension builds up to the point that it's ruptured.
And the fracture is
fractured
so much worse.
all the way down that line. Instead of just pulling that energy, dealing with the energy that's stored up there, even though it's challenging and hard and sometimes painful, can have a better outcome than if we ignore until the full-blown earthquake like swallows up the home,
exactly.
Right? So to speak,
and
metaphorically.
What's interesting about when we ignore our fault line, the spaces where it hits us the most when it does trigger is usually on our most vulnerable spots.
Yeah, of course.
So all the spaces where it's like our children, or just like in a divorce, often the children get hurt the most, or it's on all the places where you're the most vulnerable. The space that you actually would want, the last place you would want it to hit is the place it hits.
Yeah. And sometimes I think in the New Age law of attraction, we've almost been taught to like ignore, ignore the hard or the bad spots or the things.
Ignore the signs.
Ignore the signs. Ignore the signs. Yeah. And just, if you don't face it, it will go away. Instead of like having this belief in ourselves of like, we're working within sovereignty here, and looking at our deep shadow contracts and knowing we have a powerful urge to support us, knowing that as we're skillfully, again, that word skillfully, I hope I don't overuse it, but I just love it. But skillfully working with that fault line to say, I'm feeling urged into dealing with the tension that's here. And so I'm going to come, if you want to apply like that law of attraction to it, that if it's there and you're feeling it, then you're still creating it. Mm-hmm. And so to go in and work with the emotions that are available, again, if we can trigger that, oh, there's intense tension here, gold mine.
Exactly.
Gold mine.
Gold mine.
I'm going to anomaly this before it fractures the whole down the line and I lose everything. Not lose everything. That's too strong of language. We can edit that out. But so looking,
I make it harder for myself.
Yeah, make it harder, make it more painful.
Mm-hmm. Because where it hits, again, is your most vulnerable spots, which is the prime place for you to reiterate your unconscious algorithm and go even deeper into a victimization role with the planet. Often it can make, especially if it hits us in our most vulnerable space, it can hit the guilt thing. Like if I would have looked at this, if I would have done this, it wouldn't have hit here. So then we start the self-sabotage or the self-punishment.
Yeah.
Which keeps us further from heaven on earth.
Absolutely. And because there's so much scarring that happens there, we have such a collection of data that we can use one of two ways. We can either use to beat ourselves up relentlessly with, or again, goldmine, we can use it to springboard into a new reality
different.
And to actually leave that fault line altogether and find solid ground.
Exactly.
Because anywhere that I can see, because the law of polarization, like equal and opposite, right? Or whatever that is. We should probably figure out that language. Edit that, Maddie.
We will, yeah.
Where we're most vulnerable, we also must have a ton of data on how to be strong. Mm-hmm. And so as we release those fault lines and as we trigger that data, then we can look at our vulnerability and we can assess the data that's there and see also within that vulnerability how frickin' strong we are.
Yep.
And how much strength that we've actually built in dealing with this scar. There's power in there to be accessed. So triggering a fault line isn't just about avoiding a catastrophic event. It's also about utilizing that data.
Utilizing power.
Yes, utilizing the power.
Untapped
choosing
power.
Anomaly, because they do go hand in hand. Fault lines and anomaly go hand in hand as you deal with that undealt with tension and built up emotional data. As you trigger it consciously with anomaly.
Yes.
And springboard it out. Mm-hmm. So like if you need to have a hard conversation with your spouse, then the anomaly of that could be like setting up a romantic weekend and romantic getaway where you normally would have just picked a fight in your bathroom and then left for work. Mm-hmm. Instead, you go away together, you eliminate distractions, and you have a chance to just be together and clearly talk about the tension that's been building and how to resolve or solve or soothe or even change locations from that fault line.
Right. And I think that when we choose that consciously with sovereignty,
yes,
it's a big part of using fault lines on purpose, like knowing our fracture spaces and choosing the anomaly within them in sovereignty.
Yes.
Because in sovereignty, we're not doing it from a place of victimization or from a place of
shadow contracts.
Yeah. So it's even in having that conversation, if you chose the romantic getaway, that in and of itself is an anomaly, but you're also doing it from sovereignty, going into it with sovereignty, knowing that you are both free and committed to yourselves.
Yes.
And in that you want to create heaven with them.
Well, and I can see, because I've seen this in my own relationship, when you have a difficult conversation and you're both in sovereignty, that you don't project anymore. You own your stuff.
Own it. Yep.
And because you can own it, you can both talk out your own internal wounds that you're not trying to project on each other, but that you're trying to resolve and heal in yourself in a profound way, because you know that your personal healing is only going to lead to a deeper relationship with your partner. And they know it too.
Yep.
And that really is like a more evolved level of partnership that all of us want to get to. And then it doesn't become this blame game or this triggering the past and going through all of the reasons why this won't work, or why you're angry, or
why they're responsible for how you feel.
You can or vice versa. You can let go of all of that, and you can truly look at that fault line, that space, because all the data's there, because you triggered it on purpose. You have it. You have it in your body. You have it in your field to look at, and then heal what needs to be healed there.
Yep.
Instead of letting the story of the tension build in a way that then you don't have control over anything, and then that's when you spin out. And that's when the fracture goes all the way through that line and affects people that didn't need to be harmed in the first place.
Yep, because you become so unconscious in it. You're just reacting at that point. So choosing anomaly within a fault line is actually choosing to, as cheesy as it sounds, respond to the tension rather than just react to it.
Yeah, I love that. That is so awake. That is so awake. And especially in today's world where we're so busy, we're so on overload, we're so on data overload and content overload and responsibility overload. I think actually fault lines is to skillfully work with a fault line is such a gift that you can give yourself that frees up space in your body. And the more space we have free in our body, the more we can actually create the art we came here to create. Not just living out our day-to-day lives, but actually having space enough in our bodies to create art.
Yes.
So this idea of purposefully finding the tension, I see like this little baby stick of dynamite, right? Like just this little, not to create like an explosion, but just to like pop the top off the tension. Like when you have like a raft that you've blown up and you just pop that little top and the air starts coming out. And you can start actually releasing all of that instead of pumping so much air in there that it finally just can't take it and it explodes.
Yep.
So I can see the genius of that. That actually makes so much sense to me as you're explaining it.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like a way of working with our humanity in love and in witness, which we'll go into, but
witness,
it does feel like it's a part of witnessing ourselves.
Yeah. Well, witness is so brave, right? We'll go into that next week or the week after, but I can see how the trajectory of a fault line would lead to witness, because witness helps us lovingly say, hey, your attention is needed here. Come here. I'll go with you. I'll show you the way out. I'll show you the way through. Witness feels like that kind, guiding voice of like the most maternal, unconditional mother, right? That's just like, come here, let me show you. Right here just needs a little bit of care. And this little bit of care will create massive amounts of relief and space to hold love and art and freedom and sovereign, like those places in our bodies that hold those intense fault lines, especially the scars that have been there for years. Like, just think of that doubled down, compounded, compacted, fractal energy that's in there. Just feeling about it feels heavy. So I can see the genius of finding those spaces and popping the top and applying anomaly and really going gold mine, not just data I can use, but a scar I can heal, and not just a scar I can heal, but a place that I can create space so I can really, really, truly evolve.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I do too. And as you were saying that, I saw how the smaller that we can make it within us, like the more we can bring it to us. So wherever you feel the tension on the grid with other people, with your partner, whatever it is, trace it all the way into your body, where you feel the tension in your body, and start soothing it there first and foremost. Because often I know for me, I will feel the tension and then I tense up more, and then I try to approach it from tension.
Yeah.
Rather than first I have to include myself in the equation. So I've got to find where the tension is in my body and release it. And that's a soft way of actually shifting the math in your resonance, because you're shifting how you feel and you're changing your glands, like the hormones that you're pumping in that moment. And then from that space, you can look at the fault line and see, okay, where are the spots of this tension, and how can I approach it in an anomaly way?
Yeah. Well, and you can ask the questions of what is needed here? What is needed here to relieve this tension? And if you can go through that process even before you release it with your partner, like you said, bring it into your body, then you can actually create a grid or a space where that conversation will be so much easier. You can alleviate the majority of that pressure before you walk into what would have normally been an explosive fight.
Yep.
It can be like a beautiful conversation of resolution and restoration.
Because if you don't actually take it into your body and shift it there first, if you try to deal with it from a space of tension, it's almost like you're going into the situation saying, this external thing has to change in order for me to feel better.
Yeah.
But the anomaly is that I can feel better and then approach it.
Yeah. Oh, that's genius. So often, I think in relationships too, we just weaponize the past, right? And we just wait for the opportunity to kind of spring it on our partner or spring it on the narcissist in our life, and so every time we just put more and more and more sticks of dynamite in that scar, and those places that we are avoiding, they can get kind of scary.
Yep. One thing that I've noticed is that when I take it into my body and shift it there first, often it fully dissolves.
Yeah.
And I don't even need to address it. And if I do, I realize in the addressing of it, I'm only addressing my reaction, which changes the equation.
Yep.
And that is powerful evidence of how powerful we are, of how much is actually in our control, which directly confronts the belief that we're powerless.
Yeah. Ooh, that's so good. That's so good. You know, I've worked on a lot of couples over the years, and it's so interesting because they usually have the same fight about every 6 weeks, right? Like it's always the same fight. It usually isn't new fights that come in. It's usually the same fight. And I might want to edit this part out. We'll see. Okay. But if you're in a relationship and you keep having the same fight over and over and over, and it leads to the same words, the same algorithm, the same outcome, newsflash, that's a fault line.
Yes.
Go there.
And which also then means if you do something different, the whole thing changes.
The whole thing changes.
Because that's the technology of a fault line, is
an anomaly.
An anomaly. You are the one that springboards whatever is going to play out.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, that's so gold. That makes us so awake, so conscious in our relationships, and so sovereign that we can choose how we want to feel instead of waiting for all this tense and intense and catastrophic energy to just be blasted upon us. We can pull it into our bodies, work with it, neutralize it, and then bring healing to that space instead of explosion.
Yep. And one thing that I've recognized about this as well is that the more conscious I become of these areas, the more I can see through my ego. When I would normally do something and I realize, wait a second, if my true intention is restoration, then I know taking that action is actually not only will it not bring restoration, but I can see even deeper that in that moment it's not even about restoration. It's about needing to be right. Because if I'm right, then I'm the good one, and if I'm good, then I deserve to be happy. So it's
or deserve to win,
or whatever it is. But I deserve to feel better because I'm right. And so it actually, in and of itself, if that's the game I'm playing lack. I'm playing the game of lack, because we know it's only the lack matrix that you need a winner.
So true.
That's the only game. If you have
So
to win,
true.
you're in lack.
I don't want to win in the lack matrix.
Yeah, because you win at the expense of forfeiting your heart, your pleasure, your desire, your true desires, your true urge.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I'm
What
glad
else?
we had this conversation.
What else would you add to that? I think we almost have the conversation in there.
Me
And it
too.
can be that light.
Yeah,
It can be
exactly.
that easy. Maybe the only... I don't know, maybe we should go back and listen to it, because I think even you defined really well what a fault line is. Like, once you kind of painted that picture, I was like, oh, I get this.
Yeah, totally.
The fault lines feels like it is the place to go on that is in your deepest partnerships and in your deepest belief systems.
Yep.
Money keeps coming up big time. So if we have a fault line with money where we are constant, I don't know how to speak to that, but money kept coming up. Are you feeling something on money?
What instantly came to me when you, at least for me with money, is, and I think this is true for a lot of spiritual
Yeah.
people, is money being tainted with pain or the cause or root of evil, like the thing that we're fighting against to be good or to make the world better. It's a powerful fault line because money is usually a center player in almost any drama that's going on the planet. Money is a central player. So it's a massive fault line. If you think about it, if you hit someone in their pocketbook, that is where they will often sacrifice, often do things they would never do,
Sell out,
compromise, all of those things. So, creating an anomaly and intentionally triggering the fault line of money in your own life. I wonder. Let's maybe talk about what that would look like. I'm not sure, but do you want to
there's
talk about
something
it?
big on money for sure. I loved everything you just said there. I want to weave it in with how. Let me feel this for a minute. I might need to talk a circle around it.
Yeah.
For a second, because money is so polarizing, and there's so many collective stored beliefs on money. So on that fault line of money is not just our own personal beliefs, but like the hive mind and the global mind.
Every war that has ever been
Yes.
fought has money at the center of it.
Yes, they try to say it's God, but everyone really knows it's money.
Well, God and money, same thing. It's power.
It's power. Yes. And so our belief or our association with power, and most likely it's how powerful we feel within our own sovereignty, will be the trajectory of that particular fault line with money. But I can see how the tension that builds with money, often when we have more and more tension with money, we spend more and more money.
It's true. It's so true.
Which only doubles down on that scarring of the belief about money. And until we really could have some catastrophic consequences to pay, because we've gotten ourselves
into such a debt.
so much debt, or so far off our integrous path that we would like to have with money, or in that conscious balance with money. So money, what it feels like with fault lines is it's a deeper conversation. There's personal fault lines that we should look at, and then global fault lines, and how tied in we are to those global fault lines.
Yeah, because if the money fault line is triggered, you mentioned earlier the housing collapse, the real estate collapse, that affected so many people.
It affected the entire world.
Yeah.
Every economy on the globe was affected by that fault line.
And as we were talking about earlier too, there are people who strategically do that. They strategically collapse economies in order to have it work in their benefit, in their favor.
Their power. Yep.
So this is a huge one. I don't fully understand it yet, but I can see that this is massive. I want to uncover this. So maybe what do you feel like it is in your life? Like if you were to take it into your body and your personal experience with money on that fault line.
Ooh, I have a blind spot there. Let me just breathe and look at it. I feel like I have to serve the master to get it. Like I have to follow the rules, serve the master do the work, serve the master keeps coming over and over and over again, instead of knowing I'm the master. I can see how that's my block to money.
Mm-hmm. Because innately you know that that's not true, but
I know for sure, but a fault line isn't about your knowing. It's about your
embedded beliefs,
about your unconscious, not even unconscious belief. Most of the fault lines feel very conscious, but about the immature or unevolved or fearful belief, not like a wisdom of knowing. My wisdom of knowing knows that money is such an amazing program for sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so available and so free flowing and wants to flow to to every space. I get that, like, in my deep urge. In my fearful parts, or in my unevolved parts where those scars are, I can see that fault line in me is that you have to be worthy, that you have to work hard, that you have to serve the master, and then you can have the money. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. What I'm wondering is, or what I was thinking about as you were talking, is that a lot of those beliefs that you just said are literally programmed into our DNA. They've been passed down for generation and generation. Like, they're not even just about Rachel.
Yeah.
About your experiences as Rachel. Like, this is so embedded in humanity, and it's the root of the lack matrix. So creating an anomaly within that, which the millennials have been doing, big time. You have 8-year-olds that are millionaires gaming on YouTube.
Yep.
And even saying that brings up so many feelings for people.
Yeah, they're so mad about it.
They're so mad. But then for me, I'm like, that is badass as shit. Just the fact to show that it's possible.
Yeah.
And that actually the reason why that's so popular is because it's such an anomaly. It's someone just doing exactly what they love, and we don't see it enough. That's why YouTube has become huge. Like it or love it, hate it, whatever. We want to see something real, because we have been so deeply programmed. And even YouTube's shifting in that way. It's becoming its own algorithm, and it's becoming less real. So how do there's something about real, or I don't want to say real, but the deepest treasure coming from the rare and the anomaly itself. You know what I mean? Like, that is actually that is actually true value. It's one of the deepest values we have on the planet is anomaly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It really is profound technology.
And sometimes even the weirdest things will happen, like an 8-year-old becoming a millionaire by gaming. I think in many ways just to show that it's possible.
Yeah.
Just to put in your face all those things that you just said. You have to work hard, you have to be worthy, you have to serve the master. No, here's an example of where you don't. And guess what? There's an infinite amount of other ones. It doesn't have to look like that. It just happened. That was the easiest place that it broke.
Yeah. Well, that is certainly the universe, the evolutionary flow, urge of the universe, triggering a fault line with an 8-year-old.
Right, exactly.
For the rest of us to see.
Yep.
Like, here's a fault line. Here's a place of intense tension. We're going to make the most playful example of an 8-year-old playing a game, becoming a millionaire, because he's doing something he loves. And the love of it is what caused the flow of that abundance to rush in. He didn't put it through a filter of right, wrong, good, bad, worthy, not worthy, all the other intense programming that we have on that. He was just like, I love this. I'm going to do it. And then in the flow came.
Yep.
Unfiltered, unbridled, right in.
Yep.
That would be how heaven on earth would feel. That would be the grid of money there.
And
find what you love and let it flow in.
Something about it's going to happen where we have the least amount of resistance to it.
Yeah.
Often where we're the least planned out. That's what's happening now on a big level with money. Like, people who bounce into massive amount of money often are just stumble into this thing they love the most.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be the equation of where they have the least amount of resistance and the most amount of engagement.
Oh, that's why following your urge matters.
That's why urge matters.
Urge knows where to push you or help you stumble into that place of abundance and money and free flowing. And then you don't have this power dynamic there. It's almost like you're astonished
right
at it. And the astonishment itself creates more money.
Yes.
Because feel the feeling of astonishment. It's like wonder. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow. It's like a different level of gratitude, where gratitude almost has like a heaviness on it. Like where wonder is like kind of mind blowing.
And it feels like the energy of astonishment allows for miracles.
Yeah.
Because you're suspended for a moment. Like all your beliefs are suspended. You're astonished. So your beliefs are on pause, sort of like your core beliefs.
Yeah.
And you allow yourself to be amazed. Yeah. And you want more of it because it feels good. When usually the ego wants to hold on so tight to what it believes because we're afraid of the other side of it.
Yeah.
But when we can be astonished, it's allowing for it to feel good, allowing for the radiance of it.
Yes.
Of new.
That's why choosing anomaly outside of your comfort zone, you might stumble upon your genius that makes you a millionaire.
Yeah.
Just simply out of choosing something so outside of what you would have normally chosen. Mm-hmm. Ooh, that feels exciting.
Yeah.
It feels like a treasure hunt I want to go on.
Exactly.
Like tomorrow.
Yep.
You know? Anything that makes you feel like that, let it bubble, let it flow. And see where it takes you. I can see the power of combining anomaly with fault lines. Mm-hmm. Genius.
They're one and the same ultimately.
And you have to bring your urge with you, and you have to bring your sovereignty with you, and
you have to dissolve your shadow contracts.
Your shadow contracts will just totally keep you from approaching fault lines altogether.
Yeah.
Because it won't even give you permission.
Yep.
It will be like, don't you dare go near that place that has the most amazing way to change your life. Don't you dare, because you are obligated to me.
Yeah.
You couldn't even know where to go.
Yep.
That's why you got to dissolve the shadow contracts. Feel your urge, step into sovereignty, know you've got anomaly tech in your pocket at all moments. Mm-hmm. And then skillfully set free those fault lines.
So I'm curious, going back to the question I asked you, but approaching it from everything you just said, if you were to notice where you have tension in your fault line with money, pulling it all the way back into your body, and then shifting it in your body, and then what instinctively comes to you as does anything instinctively come as an action step after that? Or an urge to move in a certain direction?
For me, the first urge that came up is to create more art. When I let myself create art, the amount of information I get during that art making session always blows my mind. And it always creates enough space so that I am ready for a new adventure. So for me, it's art and adventure. That's what came up, honestly.
Well, and what's interesting about creating art is that you are allowing yourself to have space for new.
Yeah.
So that's
always the space
strategy to bring more new in, create something new.
I do feel like I need to tell everyone, I'm real bad at art, real bad, and I don't care. Mm-hmm. I still love it, and I still do it, and I do it just for me. Mm-hmm. It's one of my most favorite expressions of sovereignty that I have. Mm. But for me, allowing myself to go into that space of creating art feels like creating money. Feels like it, Yeah. That's what flips the script, as you say, bring it into your body, and what eases the tension there is, for me, it's that.
Yeah. For me, I feel my art, when I pull it into my body, I can feel where I need expansion, and then when I expand, I want to engage. Mm-hmm. I want to engage in the moment.
Yeah.
Whereas when I'm contracting, I want to hide from the moment.
Yeah.
And when I engage in the moment, even when I'm by myself, I suddenly want everything to feel lighter and more playful. I want to feel more sensual. I want to feel more loving. I want to feel more lighthearted.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm creating art with the grid itself.
Yeah.
I even feel often in my home, I will feel like I want the walls themselves to know I love them. I want to tickle them awake, tap them. And I want to feel like because everything's conscious. I want to interact with consciousness like, I love you, this is so fun, rather than I resent you, this is heavy.
Yeah, exactly. You guys should know, total side note, Amanda might get mad at me for saying this. Amanda creates like the most amazing food art, like food magic. And today as we were recording, she made me the most magical cup of coffee that literally sprungboarded me into heaven on earth. So when she, like, her alchemy with just the way she does food magic creates heaven on earth for anyone participating in it. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, I love it. And as I said this morning, being able to give that to someone else.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's a good space for communion for me. And it helps shift that obligation energy when I truly want to. And when it truly comes from, I don't know, there's something so joyful about putting herbs and love together and knowing that you just truly want to, and you do it because you want it to exist, like you said.
Yes. That is as a creator, to get to the place where you only want to create because you just want to see it exist for no other obligatory reason, just that you love it so much that you have to see it exist. It's like a need. You need to see it exist. Mm-hmm. That's the most grandest form of motivation for any true creator or true artist.
Agreed. And I think that when we go into witness, which is part of this fault line thing, in the sense of that means we were wanted at that level. Mm-hmm. Like, just because in the magnificence of us existing.
Yes.
You know, like witnessing that.
I love that.
Because anything that does actually make it to physical existence, it was urged into existence.
It was, we urged for it and it urged for us. Mm-hmm. And we met on the playing field of manifestation.
Yeah.
We met there in the middle, combining our two energies to create a thing that exists. Fault lines are powerful.
Yeah.
I just had a thought that came in and it went out. I was trying to grab it. When we have all that tension or all that scarring or as we're doubling down on our fault lines, they take up so much, not just energetic space, but mental space. Like, when we're so full of that tension, the thought of trying to create art or food magic or making love to the grid, it's like trying to have sex after a long day and a long night of working and taking care of kids, and you're just like, I'm just not feeling it tonight, honey.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in our daily lives, like to make love to the grid. If we can trigger those fault lines and clear those out of the body, get rid of those, get rid of all that tension, the space that it wants to be filled with is that art, is that lovemaking, is that connection and communion and witness. Like, we have an aliveness and we actually have energy to actually want to do our art. Mm-hmm. So if for no other reason for fault lines to be skillfully and consciously triggered would be not just to have the reward of having that tension gone, but the space of being able to truly like participate fully in the present moment would be the best gift you could give yourself. Mm-hmm. Because what would you create in that moment if you had all the space to do it and none of the tension in your body that you're carrying around? And some of those scars we've had for decades. How much weight is in there holding us down, holding us back?
Yep.
So for no other reason, I think maybe the most beautiful reason to trigger a fault line would just be for art itself, or for lovemaking itself, or for food magic itself. Like almost a reason that seems so foreign, not like, okay, so I can evolve into the next best whatever. I should say this better, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even about that. It's not even about needing it to catapult us into some like best motivational speaker on the planet or best CEO. It doesn't even feel like that.
It doesn't even have an agenda.
It doesn't have an agenda. Moment. It just creates this gentle, open space of energy to feel the essence of the present moment and to be able to make love to it in that moment. Oh yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'm going to put little baby sticks of dynamite on all my fault lines.
Yeah.
See what happens.
Me too.
Although I think I might have already done all that.
You have. Well, one of the things I was just thinking about when you were talking, you said about it creating space, about when we dissolve tension, when we really dissolve tension in the moment. What I've been realizing is that tension in the moment is created simply through a storyline I'm triggering.
Oh yeah.
So if I start intentionally dissolving the tension, it is changing all of a sudden I change the storyline. Oh wait, I'm safe right now. Oh wait, I can be playful. Oh wait, I can allow. And something about with the food magic thing, when I was reading about alchemy, and it talked about how an alchemist, the difference between an alchemist and a chemist is that an alchemist knows when he walks into a lab that his consciousness affects the experiment, and a chemist doesn't. They don't include consciousness in it.
Oh, that is so big.
Yeah. And I've thought about that with my food, because water and food is so malleable to our thoughts. So often we don't even realize if we're cooking or eating unconsciously, it's affecting the cells, the molecular structure of that food or the water.
Absolutely. I can feel the truth of that as you speak it, and the importance of it.
Yeah.
I often, as we're receiving transmissions for this class, it's amazing how often Source or Spirit speaks of alchemy and this ancient alchemy that I think we have forgotten about that's in our body. And they speak to us about it so often that now I try to tap in before they even bring it to my awareness of what alchemy can I engage in the body that's already primal and ready to assist in this very moment. And you know what? It's there every time.
It's always there.
It's there every time.
And
we're just not conscious to it.
Often I feel like it comes in the most subtle ways.
Yeah.
We so often look for the big ways. We want to change everything. What can be but when I
that's
shift
the subtle messaging of the lack matrix.
It is.
It's that you have to be the best. You have to dominate the grid. You have to do it in such a big way that everyone notices, which then you don't even start because it's so big, you're so overwhelmed, it knocks you out. So the programming is so beautifully manipulative that you stop before you start.
Yep.
It's genius on that level.
Genius for shutting down creativity.
Yep, absolutely.
Genius for shutting down anomaly.
Absolutely.
And creation itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to go to the subtlest
spaces, that's what I've realized. And for me right now, in terms of hacks, the thing that keeps coming up is the physical body. That's our touch point. That should always be what I'm touching into. And it's not just about how I feel physically, but how I am thinking about what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Like the story I'm telling. In other words, the relationship between my thoughts and my physical body, my physical experience. That to me seems like the alchemy that has been, at least in my grid, awry. Yeah. There's been a miscommunication. Like my thoughts have not been supportive of my health.
Yeah.
My thoughts have not been supportive of my expansion or my evolution.
Yeah.
My thoughts have actually caused extinction and sickness. And in the past, it's changing now. But I realized that the marriage between thoughts and the physical body and emotions in the physical body are essential. It's our greatest touch point, and yet it's the thing that we tend to bypass the easiest.
Well, even in the past I used to meditate to just try to escape the body instead of go deeply, deeply in it and see the magic and alchemy that's there.
Exactly.
Because you can't, when we talked about in sovereignty, like the art of emanation, that's the place to get to anchor heaven on earth. Like we want to emanate from our bodies, from the feeling space of our bodies. We want to emanate heaven on earth.
Yeah.
Because that's what merges with us. And we carry around the grid wherever we go. So we're not looking, how do I tap into the grid? We're like, no, I am the grid.
I am the grid.
I am emanating it as we speak from my very cells. That's what we're looking for. You can only do that by anchoring deep, deep, deep into the flesh, into the skin, into our humanity that is housed in this body, nowhere else.
Yep.
Nowhere else.
Ooh, I just saw a big light right there.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
As we do this work, I've been seeing orbs and lights shining everywhere that I always saw them before, but not, I can see the dimensions.
We're glitching the matrix.
Yeah, the
It's
glitch in the
anomaly.
matrix.
Yeah.
I can see the dissolving of like that. You know how when you're really tapped in, you can almost see like this little veil. It's almost like a membrane. That's the word. It's like a membrane between us and like the dimension we're trying to access. And the more I've been setting my gen free, the more I've been doing this work, the membrane to those other dimensions is dissolving. And it actually blows my mind what I can see that I couldn't see before.
Yeah.
And that is the magic I want to keep inviting in.
Me
because
too.
we have realms that we can access that are right here, because we're not looking, or because our eyes aren't attuned to it, we don't know that we have access to. And not just access to, but powerful technology that wants to be given and wants to be utilized.
Interacted with.
Yeah.
I feel like heaven on earth and hell on earth is all about how we are relating to the physical experience. And something that I keep getting reminded of is that heaven is not a future space. It's now.
Yeah.
It's a present space. It's being more present in the moment. It's a resonance away from us, not a timeline away from us.
It really is.
And so we don't ever have to think of
It's an
something
emanation.
that's in the future. We emanate it.
It's an internal fleshy eminence.
Yeah.
I guess is a rudimentary way of saying
Right.
that.
So-
But because don't leave your flesh behind, right? It's
Right.
not about escaping the body or overcoming the body or transcending the body. It's about being in the body
Yeah.
and still emanating it.
Yeah. And that in and of itself triggers your fault lines.
Oh, yeah.
To emanate heaven on earth triggers everywhere where you've had the tension around the strongholds that keep you in the algorithm of lack.
And what I like about that, doing it that way, is as you pull it into the body like you talked about before, is the antidote to all that tension really is love. And so if you can pull that tension, you can feel it and pull it into the body and offer it a great deal of love. That feels like the alchemy of that transcendent moment, that after you've soothed it, you might not even need to work it out with that grid or with that partner or with that entire line, because you worked it out in yourself.
So in and of that, it changed the math.
Yeah.
And that's another part of the technology, is that when you change, you line up when you create an anomaly, you line up to a different version of everyone, like
Yeah.
you did with your family.
Oh, yeah.
You lined up to a different version of Brad, your sister, your dad.
Oh, it was
Good or bad, you lined up to a different version.
It was so miraculous that I didn't know that just changing the one little math of that the cascade of events that changed the entire equation, literally it's still changing it. And it's so remarkable. It's miraculous. There's no other word. And it's fun.
And it's empowering, because you realize it was in your hands all along. It wasn't about bowing down to the right people and doing the right amount of service and
obligation.
Yeah, and self.
I can win this worthiness game if I just work a little harder.
Or if I suffer more.
Yep.
It changes it all. It's a totally different algorithm.
Yeah.
So yeah, fault lines and anomaly, all of it, everything we've covered so far is miraculous technology.
Yeah. And it's not ours, you guys.
Yeah.
Like, this is stuff we're being shown, and they're making us learn it first, which has caused it so much fun and excitement. And we've had to go deep on a lot of our own stuff in our own world, and we're grateful to do it. And so as we're pulling this through, we're experiencing it with you. We're all in this together, you guys. This is a community movement. This isn't an individuation. This is we're together in this, and we're for ourselves, and we're here for each other too.
Yes.